get this show started. Gotta hype myself up. Ugh. Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Thank you so much for clicking on this video today. I worked really hard on it, so please enjoy it. So if you've been anywhere on the internet, you've probably come across the name of this show, Bridgerton. And if you're like me, you don't watch shows very often. You probably, yeah, I don't know, I'm probably alone in that. I definitely prefer to read than watch a show. But I wanted to know what Bridgerton was all about. Why does everyone love it so much? Pretty much all I knew was that it was romances, a bunch of romances set in the Regency time period. And there was something about the family of Bridgerton. I don't know. But I wanted to know. So, I'm going to take you guys along with me as I read the first 4 books in the series. That's half of the series. The 3rd book follows a couple that has not been adapted yet in the show. So books 1, 2, and 4 are the ones that have been adapted so far in the show. But I'm going to read the first 4. So strap in. It's going to be full spoilers. I'm going to tell you guys about it so that if you don't feel like reading the books, like you've watched the show already, you don't feel like reading the book, maybe I can just tell you what's different about the books and what actually happens in the books so that you don't have to. You're welcome. But yeah, let's just hop right into it. Hey guys, look at my pants today. Aren't they great? Okay, so I am 15 of the way. I'm 15% of the way through The Duke and I. And so far we have been introduced to a lot of characters because there's a lot of Bridgertons. There's like 7. But it's nice because the author thought of a smart little trick to help me remember who's who, because she just said that the Bridgertons are quirky and they name everyone in alphabetical order. So the firstborn's name begins with an A, and then the B, and then a C, and so on, which makes my life easier as the reader. So, pretty nice. But the prologue was actually about our love interest, who is this Earl, now Duke. I think this book is going to teach me a lot about like royal lingo, because I didn't know that an Earl meant that they were set to inherit a dukedom. I didn't know that. I thought it was just a different title. So that's good to know. But I read the beginning of this while I was at the beach with some friends, and then I read it in the dentist's office, and then I just read it a little bit at the library. So I only got 15% of the way through. But so far, so the prologue is interesting because it's about our main character and how, or about our main love interest, sorry, and how he came to be, and how his father is a little piece of crap on my shoe. He sucks. Like, okay, so apparently him and his wife were having a really hard time conceiving an heir, and then when they finally did, he made his wife all throughout her pregnancy, like all 9 months, he made her stay in bed so that she wouldn't have a miscarriage, like for fear of her having a miscarriage. And so she just, I cannot imagine needing to be bedridden for 9 months. I'm sure that some of that was kind of nice because when you're pregnant, you don't want to be like moving around a whole lot, but like for 9 months, oof, that would suck. But anyway, so he made his wife do that, and then when she gave birth and he saw that it was a boy, he's like, finally. And then he goes and he like shows off his new baby boy to all of his friends while his wife dies. The way that the book said it was so jarring too. I need to find it because it was it made me so sad. Meanwhile, the Duchess, who had been bleeding steadily since the birth, slipped into unconsciousness and then finally just slipped away. Like while he's showing off his baby boy, his wife just dies. And then it goes on to say that they didn't even love each other because all her purpose was to conceive an heir, and she did great at that. So that's all he wanted from her. I was just like, this dude is not having a good first impression. And then it gets worse because he just leaves his son in the care of a nurse and then leaves and then comes back when he's like 2 years old, and he tries to talk to him but he can't talk yet, and he's like, why can't he talk yet? And she's like, some kids don't talk when they're 2. And then he comes back when he's 4 and he's still not talking, and he almost hits him, and the fear of his father hitting him makes the little boy finally say no, and that's like his first word. And so he's like the terror of his father hitting him is what makes him say his first word. But then he develops a stutter, and his dad's like, oh, he's a moron. Like, he called him a moron. He called this little 4-year-old a moron because he was stuttering. I feel so bad. So this kid has a stutter, and he like worked so hard to make the stutter go away so that he could actually meet his dad. And then his dad makes him so nervous that he still can't talk to him even though his stutter gets better. Oh my gosh, it's so sad. It's just terrible. I'm like, I hate this man. I hate this man. Anyway, and then it like flashes forward to when he's an adult. And then we follow Daphne, who is the 4th born. You can tell because her name begins with a D. And I can see that it's going to be a romance between her and the Duke. His name is Simon. I forget his last name. They're probably going to say his last name a lot because he's the Duke whatever. It's like Hastings. I think Hastings is the name that he doesn't like though because that's his dad's name. But they had their little meet cute already and I loved it. Oh, it's so funny. So I think Daphne is marrying age and her mom is so funny because she's like stressing out about getting her a husband even though she's only like 20. But back then that was kind of like, oh no, this is kind of worrying. You're not married yet. And there's a guy that keeps trying to marry her that she really doesn't want to marry. And it's also interesting because we're kind of seeing what the culture was like back then. She has 3 older brothers and it seems like their job is to to convey to any suitors, whether they should get lost, I guess, it seems like, because Anthony, the firstborn, is responsible for telling this guy that really wants to marry her that he's like, no, she doesn't want to do it. And so that's his job to do that. And he keeps on telling this one dude not to bother her because she doesn't want to get married. But then this guy like corners her at a ball, and Simon, the Duke, the now grown-up Duke, overhears their conversation and hears her like trying to reject him, and he's like not having it. And so he's like, oh, this seems like a damsel in distress. I'm gonna go try and like eavesdrop to see if something bad's gonna go down, if she needs saving. And then things get hairy, and like the guy that's talking to her grabs her and is like, you must marry me, you must marry me. And he's like, oh, time to save her. But then she like clocks him, she just punches him, and he's like, oh, apparently she didn't need saving. And he starts laughing, and then she like looks up at him after being like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I hit him so hard. She like looks up at him, she's like, who are you? And she's like, the audacity to laugh at this situation. And he's like, I mean, I was gonna save you, but it seems like you got this covered. It's pretty funny. So I'm like, I already ship it. This is a hilarious way to meet. And according to her, his face was quite simply perfection. It took only a moment to realize that he put all of Michelangelo's statues to shame. Okay, girl. Tone it down a little bit. We can tell. We can tell you're obsessed already. So it's pretty fun. It's pretty fun so far. That's just a hilarious way to meet. So I'm gonna keep on reading because so far it's very entertaining. Okay, so I'm not even that much farther in. I'm only 30% through. But the dating trope was just introduced. The fake dating trope. And I didn't see it coming. I didn't know that it was gonna happen. This is why I like not knowing the tropes going into it, because I feel like, especially with romance, like this is why it's one of my least favorite genres. There's not very much surprise in it. They're pretty similar to each other, especially if they have similar tropes going on. And so I want to leave as much to surprise as possible, because it just makes the reading experience more interesting. If I know exactly what trope is going to keep on happening, then it's a little bit unenjoyable. So yeah, apparently the Duke and Daphne Bridgerton are both so fed up with the way that they keep going to these balls, needing to be introduced to all the singles and being just paraded around and stuff. They're so fed up with it that they just decide to fake date, pretty much. Whatever the Regency period equivalent of dating is. The Duke is going to make himself seem interested, which will make her seem... The argument was that if they do this thing, then the Duke wouldn't have to keep on meeting a bunch of new people every ball that he goes to. And Daphne will get even more suitors, because there's nothing more interesting about a girl than her almost being taken, and so it'll just make her so much more interesting to the suitors. And so they have concocted this plan to fake court, I guess. And it worked, because the next day when the Duke shows up to the Bridgerton household, there's a ton of suitors there all seeking Daphne's attention, and so that was pretty funny. And he brought flowers, and this part was actually so sweet, but he gave the flowers to Mrs. Bridgerton, Violet Bridgerton, and she like cried because she like never receives that kind of thing. And so I was like, that's actually pretty sweet. But seriously, the chemistry, I'm like, wow, this is popping off from the start, because when he gives the flowers to the mom, it says Daphne decided then and there that she'd be a fool if she didn't fall in love with him. Like, dang, okay, we doing this. They already very much like each other, and it's very interesting to see the Duke's, like, the man's perspective in this, because usually the romances are from the woman's perspective. Well, there's actually a good amount where it's both, and sometimes that can make it a little bit, like, you have to do it right, because then if you see both perspectives and there's no mystery and no, at least on the reader's part, there's no wondering about and no yearning for, like, oh, I hope they think this, I hope they love me, I hope blah, 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 blah. Because if you already know what they think, then there isn't much left to the imagination there. And so I feel like this author so far is doing a pretty good job of showing both sides, but it not being too not tension, like, and it not being too untensioned. You know, there's still tension, and so that's making it better. It's kind of funny to see how, like, modern day slang kind of creeps into their dialogue. It's kind of funny. So this is pretty sweet. I'm liking it so far. Guys, there's no way Anthony and Simon just had a fist fight over this. This is interesting because Daphne doesn't have a dad, so her older brother has to, like, step in as her protector, and he is taking it so seriously. He literally took Simon by the throat and was like, okay, and Simon fought back, so it was like a full-on thing. These kids. It was so funny when Simon found out who Daphne was. He was like, it's a commandment of friendship, thou shalt not date your friend's sister or something like that. Just funny because I'm actually dating like my brother's best friend right now, so oopsie daisy. They just had a family dinner with Simon in attendance, and their family relationship, they're supposed to like sit still and be polite and be whatever, what you're supposed to be when you're higher class, but instead they're like teasing each other and throwing food and stuff like that, and it's cute. And Simon hasn't really experienced any of that. He doesn't have any siblings, didn't even have a mother, hardly had a father. I love that kind of trope of like someone that grew up without family kind of becoming acquainted with this very energetic, fun family. That's a really fun trope that I've seen in a few books that really warms my heart. So I like that that's happening. And then they just invited him to like go on this yacht with them to this place, and so that's gonna be fun. Yes. Yes, she does. Guys, I was just trying to like get ahead in the reading and was reading a lot right before I went to bed, and so much happened. Well, first of all, they went on like that little picnic adventure vacation thing with the Duke, and he and Anthony fell into the river together, and that just made them more mad at each other. And then after that, Simon kind of like stayed away from balls and stuff, and so Daphne was like, what's going on here? But then he showed up to one and they were talking, and it led to a very private moment in the gardens. But Anthony saw them, and Anthony came and like started wailing on Simon. I was like, frick, this is not good. Anthony is the definition of the protective older brother. The definition. Oh, it's so bad. And he said like, oh, you've defiled my sister now you have to marry her. And he's like, I'm sorry, I can't. And at this point I'm like, oh, there's something wrong. Can he not have kids? Because he keeps on saying like, if she marries me, then all her dreams would be crushed because her dream is to have a family and all that stuff. And I'm like, can he just not have kids? Is that the problem? Why is he so... But then his inner monologue sometimes sounded like it was more of a decision, because he would be like, oh, I can't tell them because they would never understand what it's like to be in my position. And so I was like, that sounds more of like like you decided not to have kids. I'm confused. But then they had to duel. They had to duel for real. And so Daphne is like, crap, a man is gonna die because of me. And so she like has to come up with a way to stop this. And then Simon and Anthony are gonna duel in the morning. And so the morning comes and they're almost about to duel, but then Daphne comes riding in on a horse and is like, stop! You can't kill each other! It's so dramatic. Oh my goodness, I really wonder how the show did this, because it is, you really don't have to add much more drama in order for it to be interesting. Like, I just read Pride and Prejudice for the first time, and it's the same as the movie except like a whole lot less dramatic. So I'm like, this is what Regency time period would look like if it was as dramatic as the books are saying. But she stops it, tries to convince Simon to marry her, and he finally confesses why he doesn't want to marry. And he says, I can't have kids. So I was like, okay, I was right. But then like what's up with his inner monologue saying like, I can't tell them because they would never understand what it's like to be in my position, whatever. Like I don't get that yet. But Daphne's response was sweet, because she was like, well, I want to marry you anyways because you're worth it. And I was like, wow, okay. I feel kind of bad that she's giving up on her dream of having kids and stuff, but maybe they'll resolve it. I don't know. I really don't know what's gonna happen, but as of now, they're gonna get married. So much happened. I'm only 55% of the way through. I don't know what the rest of the book is supposed to be about now, because they're gonna get married, and so there must be some other conflict that is yet to happen. I don't know what else could happen though. Like, everything has happened already, like all the dramatic things. I feel like the romance probably should have dragged on a little bit more, could have burned a little more. It was the kind of thing where they were attracted to each other off the bat. They were already saying stuff in their inner monologues that was like, oh, she's so gorgeous, I can't stop looking at her, and stuff like that. It's a short book already, and it's already like they're getting married, and it's only halfway through. So I'm like, that was quick. I don't really know what the rest could have in store. They just had a cute interaction when he gave her her engagement ring, because he got her an emerald one, and he's like, they remind me of your eyes, and she's like, my eyes are brown though. And he's like, there's a little bit of green in them. And she's like, what? Where? And she like looks and she's like, I never noticed that before. And that was cute, because my eyes are the same way. They're brown, but then like I found out at some point that there's a little bit of green in them. Nope, this lighting isn't good enough. Can you see it? I don't know if you can see it. It's obvious in some lightings and then not in others. This is why I was confused to hear that the series was like spicy. Because back then it was like a lot more serious for a woman to be intimate with a man before marriage. Like it made her unmarriageable to anyone else, and it made her like used goods, you know? And so that's why I'm surprised that the series is like spicy, because it's so like they hardly did anything, Simon and Daphne, but it was enough to defile her forever and make it so they had to get married. So I'm like, well, it's a good thing that all these couples end up getting married, I'm pretty sure, because all the girls would be used goods and unmarriageable if they didn't. Like with this time period, it just seems kind of incompatible with spice, so that's why it's kind of surprising. This conversation is making me crack up. It is the night before the wedding, which means Violet has to come in and literally give Daphne the talk, and she is so uncomfortable. Daphne's like, tell me more, and she's like, like she's so uncomfortable. It is cracking me up. Poor girl is so confused. No one's telling her what marriage requires. I feel so bad for her, honestly. I was curious how they did it back then, because they always were so hush-hush about these kinds of things, and it just ends up in her thinking that I don't even know what she thinks. He's really hesitant to consummate the marriage the night of the wedding, because they're at like an inn and he wants to wait till they actually get to the castle or wherever. So he wants to wait, but then she thinks that that means that he literally like doesn't have the ability, because he told her he can't have kids, and then he's saying like, no, let's not do it tonight, and she's like, oh no. She's like, I won't tell anyone. Girl, this is a bad situation for everyone just because no one is telling her this information. Speaking of things no one's telling her, she's literally finding out from the housekeeper that Simon had a like speech impediment growing up. Like, he hasn't told her. I'm like, do you think she just will stop loving you? Why does the housekeeper have to be the one telling her this? And now I don't know if she'll like feel really betrayed or something, but she's about to go talk to him, so.
A few moments later.
Well, that didn't go well, to no one's surprise. Simon can have kids, he just won't. Yeah. We saw this coming, but doesn't make it any less painful. Right, Shadow? Yeah, right. Be honest with your spouse, guys. That is actually a horrible thing to lie about. That's pretty bad. I would be pissed. I would be so pissed. He's just so set on getting his dead father back by not having any heirs. I don't really know what he's trying to accomplish with that. His dad's dead. That's the whole reason that he was able to come back to England, because his dad died, and so he's like able to come back. But he's so set on letting the legacy die that he is unwilling to have kids, even though he married someone that really wants to have kids. Well, this is gonna be the problem now. It didn't end all happy and nice when they got married. That's usually how romances go. You know, the happy ending is them getting married or something. But not this time. We're still having issues. We're still fighting. We're still discovering new things. Oh man, this is so messed up. So you admit that you kept something from her. You admit it. You admit that not everything was out in the open, bro. Come on. No, you didn't. That's the point. You did not warn her. She did not know what she's getting into. Dude, you need to change. Oh. She said it. She said it. Well, this just keeps getting worse and worse, don't it? This is so bad. Simon went out and got drunk and then came back and then slept with Daphne while he was drunk. And it made it so that he didn't like normal, and so he feels really betrayed by Daphne, and now he left and then she left. She went back home, so now I'm just like, what's happening? Where are we going with this? Okay. The crazy just keeps on going. So Daphne finds out that she's pregnant. Apparently one time was enough. And she sends a letter with Anthony, because Anthony, of course, is super angry about Simon leaving her. And so Anthony tracks him down, comes to him, brings Daphne's letter to him, which communicates that she's pregnant. And so he immediately leaves to come to her. And then he goes to Bridgerton house, but she's not there. He goes back to Hastings house. She's not there. She went riding, and he's like, she's pregnant. She can't be riding a horse. And so he goes, and all of his haste, they run into each other. I didn't really understand what happened, but their horses ran into each other and Daphne fell down, and that was kind of scary because I was concerned about the baby. He was like, Daphne, are you okay? And then he's like, okay, good, you're okay. What were you thinking? You can't ride a horse when you're pregnant. And she's like, well, you don't have to worry about that because I'm not pregnant. And he's like, you lied to me? And she's like, no, I thought I was pregnant, but I'm not. And I'm like, Oh, she's like so sad. So my heart hurts. But now they're having like a really heartfelt conversation. I'm like underlining everything because they're really talking about like how if has Simon ever thought about if he wants a family? Sorry, there's my brother's working outside. If he wants a family, because Simon always says, if I give him a child, he wins. But then Daphne said, no, if you give yourself a child, you win. We all win. I'm like, yeah, that's right. And then she's like, you have to let go of your anger. You're being enslaved by him even now that he's dead. And he's like, it's all I have. It's all I have. It's what drove me to work on my stammer. It's like his driving factor all his life to succeed is his anger. And so now he's having a hard time letting go of that. I'm just like, this is deep. This is hitting me in the feels. Alright, done with the first book. That was such a sweet ending. I love that it ended that way. I really do feel like having kids was like a symbol for them of really breaking free from that like generational trauma. So I really love that they had kids, and the book ended with them having their fourth kid, who was finally a boy, because they had 3 girls and then finally had a boy. So it's an heir. So that's so sweet. I love that. I really do. It's cool to see the implementation of some traditional values that actually were nice for people when they were actually nice people. Like seeing the older brothers being protective and stuff was so funny, but also like sweet. Like it would have been like if Simon was a bad husband, then it would have been really great for the older brothers to be the system of protection for Daphne. But it turned out that Simon was a good husband after all, so it all became fine. So I like that there was like a system of protection put in place for the ladies in case the husband turned out to be a horrible person. But yeah, that was so sweet. So the next book, I don't know which sibling it's gonna follow. I'm guessing Anthony. Alrighty, I've started on the second Bridgerton book, and I was really tempted to pronounce this viscount, but for whatever reason, my instincts were like, I'm pretty sure this is one of those words that isn't pronounced at all how it looks. And I was right. It's apparently pronounced viscount, which wasn't on the list of any of my guesses, so that was interesting. My second guess was something like viscount or something like that. So far, so this is Anthony's romance, looks like, and the prologue was about him. And it's actually really interesting how him and Daphne are in the same family, but they both had very different experiences, because Anthony was a lot closer with his dad. As the dad has passed away, as Anthony is the oldest, he spent the most time with him. He spent like 18 years with his dad, and he was like his favorite person ever, his like role model, his everything. And so when he passed away at the young age of 38, it really affected him, and it left him thinking that he was going to die young as well, because there was no way that he could outlive his father. Like, there was just no way. And so now he has this notion that he has to live all his life before 38, and so he's almost 30 now, and he's been, as they call it, a rake this whole time, and that's their word for just like a promiscuous, like irresponsible man that spends all his time in brothels and drinks and like all this stuff. That's who he's been up till now, but suddenly he wants to get married and have an heir, and his brothers are both very shocked by that. So now he's going to enter into the society, the season. It's so funny that they call it a season, because then it just makes me want to call it like a mating season or something. But the season where all the ladies come to London and they meet all the men or whatever, so he's finally going to participate in them, which he hasn't before, because he doesn't mess around with well-bred young ladies. And the girl in this, her name is Kate, and she has a younger sister who is the beauty of the talk of the town. She's super beautiful, very much sought after by all of the eligible young men. Edwina is her name, and Anthony hears that she is the one that is the most sought after, and he's like, okay, she'll do, because his criteria for a lady are as follows. Gotta be somewhat attractive, gotta have a brain, you know, you want to be able to have a conversation with her, and he has to, under no circumstances, ever be in danger of falling in love with her. So those are his 3 criteria for a woman, because he thinks it would be inconvenient, I don't know what language he used, to fall in love with this wife, because he thinks he's gonna die anyway, so like, why bother with that? So clearly his mindset is very not normal, but that's where he's at. So he hears about Edwina and is like, okay, she'll do. But Kate does not like this, because Kate loves her sister so much, even though they're half sisters. And Kate is the plainer, older, almost spinster sister. She's 20, almost 21. That is so old. That's literally how old I am. That is so funny. Nowadays, you get married at 30 and that's like normal. So Kate is very protective over her. So now I guess Anthony is going to have to go through Kate in order to get to Edwina, and I'm pretty sure that's how their romance is going to blossom. So this is a cute dynamic so far. I'm excited. Their dynamic is already cracking me up. Because Colin met Kate first, and she told him how disapproving she was of Anthony dancing with Edwina and stuff. But then Colin went to Anthony and was like, oh, you have to meet her sister. She loves you. She thinks you're great. And you have to talk to her before you can court Edwina. And so he was like, oh, perfect. This will be easy to just go and win over some aging, dull spinster. So Colin totally tricked him. So the first time they met, Kate is so hostile towards him and he does not know what to do. He's so mad at Colin the whole time. Oh man, it's so funny. And then immediately, like, he senses some kind of rivalry between him and Kate, because he says something about this Miss Catherine Sheffield sparked his temper and made him positively itch to do battle with her and win. That much went without saying. He's like so determined to like beat her, whatever that means. And then Colin's like, oh, you two should dance. And she's like, no, that's it. And Anthony's like, yes, of course, let's dance. And she's like, no, I'm perfectly fine. And he's like, oh, please, let me stop you from doing something you'll regret. So they already have like an enemies to lovers thing. And quite honestly, I am eating it up. Oh man, I love them already. Their dynamic is just hilarious. I'm sorry. Oh, my cat is just really cuddly right now. Their dynamic is really hilarious. They really have the banter nailed. They just are quipping and arguing. She has such funny comeback. They have such funny comebacks for each other. They both have really funny comebacks. They're trying to be so sassy with each other. But basically what happened was he came over to call on Edwina, but Edwina was gone with another suitor who actually happens to be the guy from the last book who was trying to propose to Daphne. So he's really shooting a shot with everyone. And so he's like waits for a little bit with Kate, but then the mom comes in and is like, oh no, you should take your dog out for a walk, because she has like a little corgi. She's like, oh okay. And she's like, you should take the viscount with you. And she's like, what? And he's like, okay, sure, I'll go. So they end up walking the dog together. Then the dog like takes off at one point while they're walking, and they come across Edwina and the other guy, whatever, I don't know, I don't recognize the name of their vehicle that they had ridden, but it had broken down. So they were just like waiting on the side of the road, and the corgi comes and runs straight into Edwina and knocks her into a lake. Then the viscount like goes in and helps her out, and then like it makes him really mad at Kate. He like yells at Kate, and then him and Edwina go ride back together, but then Kate is left with the other dude to walk back with him. So that was interesting. They had plenty of super nice things to tell each other along the way. So I'm just gonna read before I go to bed tonight. So far I'm 21% through, but I'm gonna get a little bit farther in before I go to bed. Hi guys, I read a lot today, so a lot has happened. So first of all, Edwina got sick after her tumble in the lake, so she couldn't come to this get together. I don't know all the names of all the different get-togethers. Lady Bridgerton hosted something and Edwina couldn't go, so only Kate went. So, and there was like this Italian singer that came to perform at the get-together or whatever, and her and Anthony had a past. So at one point, oh my goodness, at one point Kate was just wandering around the house and went into a room that she didn't know was Anthony's study, and then she heard the door open and like hid under the desk, and Anthony and this like singer came in, and they're like talking and being all flirty, and she could tell something was about to go down, and she was like, please, oh my gosh, please. But then Anthony found her and was like, let's get together later. And so the singer left, and then it was just him and Kate, and he's like, what the heck have you done? And oh my gosh, all their conversations, I can't even like adequately recount what their conversations are. They're just so good. I love whenever they have a dialogue together. But anyway, he is feeling the hots for her, especially because he had like a dream about her the night before. And he was like, what? Why does my brain like her so much? And like, why am I so attracted to her? And so he's finally like there, and she's in front of him, and they kiss. They have a whole makeout sesh, and Kate's like finally like stops him and is like, what are we doing? What is happening right now? I thought you wanted my sister and like all this stuff. She's like, why did you do that? And he's like, because I wanted to. She's like, you can't want that. You're going after my sister. So that was a thing that happened. And then the other big thing was that Edwina gets better, and then Lady Bridgerton has another thing that she's hosting, which is like a week-long thing in their country home. And so her and Edwina go travel there to her country home. And of course Anthony's there because he technically owns all of the houses. So all three of the Sheffields are there, Kate, Edwina, and Mary, the mom. And so they're all there. Like everyone's there. Like so so many women are there, so many gentlemen, and it's like not very subtle that Lady Bridgerton has invited all these women for her boys. But she invited gentlemen just to like try and make it a little more subtle. It didn't work, but there you go. There was one moment where Kate and Anthony were in the gardens, but that got interrupted by Colin because Daphne and Simon came over and she wanted to play at this lawn game. That was like a Bridgerton tradition. That sounds so fun because there's just so many things about this lawn game that it basically is croquet. They didn't call it croquet, but it basically is. But it's like croquet times 100 when it comes to the competitiveness and the unsportsmanlikeness. It's like a tradition for you to be super unsportsmanlike when you're playing this game with them. And so Kate and Edwina are playing it with them, and they like make Anthony pick the pink ball and stuff, and it's just like, it's so petty. It's hilarious. And they like play, and Kate's not very good at it, but then at one point Anthony's ball gets knocked super far away, and then she like finishes off and like knocks it in the lake. And they're like, whoa, they're like, well, that's game. And she's like, but I didn't even win. And they're like, that was better than winning. Knocking Anthony's ball in the lake. So that's pretty funny. I seriously love the dynamic of Kate and Anthony right now. I definitely am liking this book better than the last one, I think. Like, the last one wasn't bad, but this just has a lot more like heat and chemistry and passion because it's very, like, the dynamic is just so, feels like forbidden, kind of. Like, Anthony doesn't want to marry her because he wants to marry someone that he doesn't love, and he feels like he's in too much danger of falling in love with Kate, and she doesn't want to marry him because of his reputation and the fact that he's trying to go after her sister. And so it's like, it just feels more forbidden. That oftentimes makes a romance book more interesting. Obviously that doesn't work for real life, but in a book I just like it more when it has this kind of thing. And also their dynamic with each other is a lot more of an enemies to lovers because of their banter and their little quips and arguments that they have. They're so good. They're really good. I feel like, what's her name? Julia Quinn's writing has definitely gotten better. I like it a lot better in this book personally. So I've been having such a good time. I've just been reading without updating very much. So yeah, that's what I plan on still doing. I swear they just keep having moments. They were walking in the gardens together and he said that she owed him something after humiliating so bad during the game, and she's like, what do you want? And he's like, I want you to answer a question honestly. And then he like totally does the book boyfriend thing where he like drops his voice and comes closer and looks in her eyes, and he's like, do you still hate me? And she can't even respond because she's so overwhelmed, and he's like, I'll take that as a no. My goodness, they keep having moments. The chemistry is crazy. Oh my gosh, I'm totally falling for Anthony right now. There's this girl called Penelope who is like a very sweet girl, but her mom always dresses her in like the worst colors. That's like the whole thing. So she's not doing too well on the marriage market or whatever. But she's a very sweet girl, and so she's friends with Kate, and there's a total B word in this ball right now named Cressida, and she's like gorgeous but very, very mean, and she was like totally like passive aggressively insulting Penelope a bunch, and then Anthony comes over and like completely obviously like cuts her off from the conversation and like greets Kate and Penelope. And then he offers to escort Penelope to dinner, which is a big honor, and Cressida's like, you can't escort her, what are you doing? And he's like, I'm sorry, had I included you in the conversation? So satisfying. And then he takes Penelope off and says to Kate, I just hate bullies, don't you? And I'm just like, I like you, sir. I like you. Guys, oh my gosh, it's happening. Oh my goodness, I can't with these two. It's too cute. Kate is really, really afraid of storms like thunder and lightning and stuff, and she couldn't sleep one night and was looking for a book to read when a storm suddenly started, and she is so terrified of them that she just kind of like becomes paralyzed, and she just kind of like huddled up in the library and stayed there. And then Anthony found her there, and then he like helped distract her from the storm and like stayed with her, and they both started talking about their parents who had died, and it was just so sweet. And now they're like actually friends. Like afterward they kind of like officially established their friendship, so now they're like calling each other by their first names and stuff, and it's just, ugh, this is so cute. Folks, many things have happened since we last spoke. I am now 82% through. I couldn't stop, I'm sorry, and I read in a lot of places that I couldn't film, so here we are. But where we left off, this is so long ago. Basically, Anthony Okay, Anthony goes to Kate in the garden, and they're talking and stuff. It's going whatever, I forget what they were talking about. But then, oh yeah, I think they were talking about, like, she was saying thank you for last night, for being there for her during the storm. So they were talking, and then, so he sees a bee flying towards her, and he totally freaks out, because this is so interesting. When his dad died, the only one that saw him die was Daphne, and she was 10 years old, and she said that he had died from a bee sting. But what happened was he just, like, collapsed, and no one knows how he died. Like, no one saw any bee stings on him or anything, but, like, to Daphne, to, like, the kid brain, that's, like, how she logicked it out. So ever since then, he's been, like, since he doesn't really care about his own life, he's been so flippant with bees, like, oh, you could kill me, but I don't care. But now that he sees one flying towards Kate, he's, like, terrified, and he's like, get out of the way. And she's like, Anthony, it's a bee. What's the matter with you? And he's so terrified. He's just like, please, please come away from the bee. And she's like, what are you doing? It's a bee. He keeps on saying that. It's a bee. And he's like, get away. And he, like, starts to pull her away, but then she pulls her arm back, and she, like, knocks it into her, and it stings her. And she's just like, oh, that hurt. Why are you like this? It's just a bee. But then, since it stung her, he's just like, we have to get the venom out. And he tries to, like, get the venom out, and since it's, like, in a compromising place, it doesn't look innocent, and he even, like, tries to suck the venom out. And then right as he does that, of course women come by and see him, and it's Lady Bridgerton, Mary, Kate's stepmom, and Mrs. Featherington, who is the most infamous gossip in the society. Of course she sees this happen, and they're shocked, and Kate is very quick to explain, it was a bee sting, he was trying to, like, get the venom out, or whatever. Mrs. Featherington was just, like, buzzing to go tell everyone, and they were like, don't you dare. Anthony was, like, threatening her, like, don't you dare tell anyone about this. And she's like, well, you must get married. And so they're all telling him, you have to get married now. And Anthony's like, fine, we'll get married. And Kate's like, what just happened? But it kind of sucks now, because she's like, I did want to marry him, but I didn't want to be forced to, and I didn't want it to be because of a stupid bee sting. So this is very interesting. But yeah, they get married. And that's how they get married. I was like, what? So silly. And she knew it. She was like, why is this the way that we're getting married? I wanted him to, like, fall in love with me. And before they get married, he even, like, comes over and tells her to her face, I'm not looking for love. Like, just so you know, this isn't going to be a love marriage. And she's like, okay. Like, dying inside. I'm like, Anthony, oh my word. And then they get married. It's so weird because, like, Anthony, his inner monologue is so dumb, because it's just him being like, yeah, I don't have to love her. I can just, you know, care for her every need and take her to bed and make sure that she's happy and all these things. And I'm just like, all of which are very loving things to do. And, like, we're getting these excerpts from the Whistledown column, which is, like, the gossip column, and they're all saying, like, while Mr. and Mrs. Bridgerton's marriage is rumored to be forced, it does seem to be a love match, because, like, everywhere they go, everyone can tell that they're in love. Like, you can tell so obviously that they're in love. And the whole time Anthony's just denying it. He's just like, oh, I'm just doing this and that. Everyone is like, dude, you're in love. I'm doing the same thing. I'm just like, bro, why are you denying that you're super in love? And, like, Kate's trying not to love him just because she thinks that he doesn't love her, but she loves him. One of the biggest things that happened was there was another night with a storm, and it was while she was asleep. While they were both asleep, Anthony was awake. They were in bed, and she, like, it's kind of like sleepwalking, where you're like asleep but your eyes are open, and she was just, like, terrified. And it was honestly so scary, like, reading it. I was like, this is scaring me, like, because she's like, her eyes are wide open, but she's, like, so still, like a statue. She's screaming, and he's, like, realizing she sounds young. Like, she sounds like a little girl screaming. She even started, like, hallucinating or something, like, dreaming, and she was, like, yelling, mama, mama. And he was like, mama? She never calls Mary that. Does she mean, like, her birth mom? But she, like, doesn't remember her. So it's very confusing and very scary for him. And then when she wakes up in the morning, he tells her what happened. And she's like, I need answers. This is crazy. I don't know why I'm still afraid of storms. And so they go to Mary and ask her questions about it. And she's, like, heartbroken that she didn't know that Kate was still afraid of storms and stuff. And then she tells her how her mom died. And her mom died from a disease, like a lung disease. But the night that she died, there was a horrible storm, like a terrible storm. Lightning was, like, cutting trees in half and all that stuff. And her mom was dying, and and she was screaming, and it was like, honestly, this scared me so bad. Like all the descriptions of like how scary it was, and how Kate, like little girl Kate, was just like a statue, and like, oh my gosh, I was just like, this is scary, especially since I was like reading it at night. I was like, and then yeah, so that's why she's scared of it, because it just like takes her back to that memory, even though she doesn't even know that she has the memory. I don't know. So that happened, and then she's like, I think I can handle a storm now. I don't think I'll be scared anymore. But then Anthony is like just so in love with her that like one day he gets scared about it and leaves, and he goes to Bridgerton house, and Eloise, one of the Bridgerton girls, sends her a letter and is like, I think something's wrong with Anthony, like you need to come get him. Like this whole time they've been having this whole like trying not to love each other but loving each other, obviously, and like all of that. Like it's so ridiculous, honestly. Oh yeah, right after Mary told her why she was so afraid, then she like looked over and saw Anthony like tearing up to see that she was finally getting answers and stuff, and like she was crying. Like her and Mary were both crying, and then she looks over at Anthony and he's like tearing up, and it says in that moment she knew she loved him. So that was like the first time her inner monologue actually admitted it. And then after seeing Kate defeat her demons, Anthony was realizing that he was so jealous of her because he had his own demons that he had yet to defeat, and so it's said that watching her overcome this stuff, he had fallen in love with his wife. It says it right there. He had fallen in love with his wife. Imagine that, falling in love with your own wife. And that's why he leaves. But when she comes to Bridgerton house and like confronts him about it and stuff, the whole time he's just telling her to leave. Like, just go, just leave me alone, just leave. And she's like, I'm your wife, stop telling me to leave. So he's just like thinking he doesn't deserve her, and so he has to like deny himself of her to like just stop loving her. I don't even know. It's so demented that I can't even like understand his train of thought. So he's just telling her to leave, breaking her heart, and then she eventually leaves, and it's depressing. And then, of course, in typical Anthony fashion, he goes and gets drunk with his brothers, and he's all hungover and cranky, and he's so cranky that his brothers eventually just tell him, go home with your wife. He's like, just go, Colin says it, he's like, just go home and tell her that you love her. What could be more simple? And then it says, suddenly it was simple. He had to tell Kate that he loved her. Now, this very day, he had to make sure she knew, and he vowed to spend every last minute of his miserable short life proving it to her. I'm like, thank you, it is simple. So finally he gets it through his thick skull that he has to just go and love her and just admit to himself that he loves her. And so he goes, and she's not at home. Oh, I don't know if I mentioned this, but Edwina has like fallen in love. She's found this man that she totally loves, and he's like the scholar. She said at the beginning of the book that she wants to marry a scholar. And so there's this man that was invited to the garden party, the country party at the Bridgertons, and she met him there. His name is Mr. Bagwell, I think. He goes to try and find Kate, but she's on a carriage ride with Mr. Bagwell and Edwina, and so he's like, oh my gosh, fine. And then he goes, but then he gets interrupted on the way by this old lady who's like this, I don't know, she's just this old lady who gets in everyone's business and like thinks herself very wise. She reminds me of Lady Catherine from Pride and Prejudice. She's like interrupting him on his way, and then finally they look over and they see this carriage going out of control. He's like, what the heck is going on there? And then they hear screaming and they hear a dog barking, and it's Kate's dog, and he's like, that's my wife. And he goes and like rides to her, but then the carriage, I guess, gets in an accident. And then it says, and Anthony could only watch in horror as his wife died before his eyes. I'm like, I was like, okay, I have to update before I read more. Is she actually dead? Is she really dead? I don't think so. I was not expecting that. But it's so, if she is dead, that is really interesting, because Anthony was the one who thought that he would die this whole time, and has been treating his own life flippantly and not loving it to the fullest because of that. And so that would be so interesting. Or if she's not dead, maybe he just thinks she's dead, and it will like make him appreciate everything so much more, and then if she's alive, then he'll appreciate it a lot. But I'm like, is she dead? So I had to update you guys before I read any further, but it was killing me. I'm like, what is going on? Okay, she's alive. She's fine. Well, she's not fine. So Anthony was like super panicked, and Edwina was also really scared. Edwina was fine. Mr. Bagwell just got a bump on the head, but Kate, super lucky, got trapped under the carriage and had her legs like pinned under it, and he like dug through it to find her, and he was like, he's terrified. It says that in that moment Anthony tasted death, like even though he wasn't dying. But then he finds her, and like he finds her, she's not moving, and he's terrified. And he's saying like, this wasn't supposed to be you. It was supposed to be me that died. It was supposed to be me. Like, this is never supposed to happen to you. And then finally she like wakes up and she's like, what are you talking about? And he's like, you're alive. Oh my gosh, you're alive. And then he's like, I just had to come tell you I love you. I was like, she's like, just get me out of here. And he said, then you'll tell me you love me. And she's like, that is so cute. I am dying. But then he got her out eventually, and her leg is really broken, like one of her legs. And so he gets her back to their house, and he gets like 3 surgeons to come set her leg, and they're all like, you didn't need surgeons to get it. He's like, just do it. And he's like a mother hen. He's so worried about her. It's adorable. But then he like finally tells her why he was trying not to love her and stuff, and his fears when it came to his father. And it's so interesting because both of these Bridgerton books have been, like, both of the male love interests have these things with their dad. And with one, it was because he hated him so much, and the other was because he loved him so much. But they both are kind of like letting their dead fathers rule over them in some way. And both of the wives are helping them overcome whatever is ruled over them. And so like with the first one, the solution was to, you know, have children and be happy about heirs. And then in the second one, it's to actually love the spouse and to be okay with falling in love even though he may die. And she was saying like, I don't think he will die. I think you're wrong about that. But even if you do, it's important to live the life that you're given well. And it was so sweet. And there's one quote that was like, it says, this woman made him a better person. He'd been good and strong and kind before, but with her at his side, he was something more. Like, so emotional. And this one too, Anthony tells her, love's about finding the one person who makes your heart complete, who makes you a better person that you ever dreamed you could be. It's about looking in the eyes of your wife and knowing all the way to your bones that she's simply the best person you've ever known. Oh my gosh, this is so sweet. It's so sweet. I'm so glad that they're actually okay with telling each other they love each other. Also, I'm at the epilogue, so I think that the percentage isn't very accurate because there's like extras at the end or something. But now I'm at the prologue. There might be 2 prologues. So I'm about to finish it up. I'll let you guys know what the end is like. So I think the second epilogue is like an extra. I might read that in a bit, but the epilogue was about Anthony celebrating his 39th birthday, which is older than his dad was, so he's not gonna die. At least not too young. That is so sweet. I definitely liked that better than the last one. Yeah, very, very sweet. I loved their dynamic from beginning to end, and the resolution is beautiful. So I really like that one. I'm excited for the third one. I think is the one that just came out on Netflix, and if I'm not mistaken, it's Colin's romance, so that is very interesting. But what's catching my attention is that both of the books ended with Lady Whistledown like writing, and it's not revealed who she is. It just says like some lady gets ready to write, and so I'm like wondering if that's gonna be like a consistent thing of like, ooh, who is this lady? Oh, who is she? She has like a secret identity. So I'm excited to see who that is. I don't know if I'll figure it out. I'm going to definitely pause reading these books after the third one, and then you guys can let me know if you want more, if you want me to read the rest of the series, especially as the seasons start coming out on Netflix, if you guys want to know what the books are about. So just let me know. Just let me know in the comments. But yeah, for now, I'm going to start on An Offer from a Gentleman, which is the next book. So, see you guys then. Okay, so apparently this isn't Colin's book. I don't know why, but the show decided to skip over Benedict's love story and just tell Colin's first. I guess they just wanted to tell that story more, which is surprising because so far this is really interesting and I'd really like to see it in an adaptation. It is about this girl named Sophie. It's just a constant noise here. We're right by an airfield and they're always flying like biplanes and stuff. It's cool. It's just loud. So it's about Sophie, who is the bastard daughter of, is it a duke? I think it's a duke. Her grandma puts her on the doorstep of this guy when she's like a little girl. And so he takes her in as his ward. Doesn't tell anyone that she's his daughter, but everyone can tell because they look alike. So it's like a secret that everyone knows. You know, it's how polite society be sometimes. One day when she is a bit older, like 10 or something, her dad comes home with a new wife who has 2 daughters. So now she has 2 stepsisters. And then suddenly her father dies one day. He says in the will that he will give his wife more money annually if she agrees to keep her Sophie on as a ward. Even though she really doesn't like her and she wants her out of her life, she wants that extra £4,000 a year, so she keeps her around but doesn't treat her well. Makes her do all the work and everything. Are you catching what I'm putting down? What story this is based off of? If you don't know, here's a hint. This is the cover of the book. So yeah, seems like there's this ball coming up, a masquerade ball that the Bridgertons are putting on. Yeah, very Cinderella-esque. And I'm liking it, and I feel like that's pretty cool, and I don't really know why the show decided to skip over that, but again, there might be reasons that I don't know about. Also, I'm still like processing this, but I just like checked on Netflix to see like, oh, just like the thumbnails of the episodes and stuff. I didn't watch any of it, but you know how when you go into Netflix it just like automatically plays the trailer, and so it started playing this trailer to season 3, and it's a ballroom scene. And I was just watching it, I was like, oh, okay. And then I started listening to the music that they were playing, and I was like, ain't no way they're playing ABCDEFU in the background of a ball scene from the Regency time period. I needed like a full 2 minutes to process. I just turned off the TV and was like, no way. I'm sorry, but that's cringe as frick. When I watch a show from the Regency time period, I don't want to hear instrumental versions of TikTok songs in the background. I'm sorry, I don't. Just like, whose idea was that? So anyway, that's the first sign that if I watch this show, I'm probably not going to enjoy it as much as I enjoy the books. It's just so funny. I was just like, no way. I just kept listening and I was like, no way, they're doing this. And then I talked to my sister who had watched a little bit of it. She stopped watching because she didn't like it, but she was like, yep, all the songs are modern. And I was like, ugh. Anyway, I'm glad I decided to read the books first because these stories are nice, and they're especially nice because they don't have TikTok songs playing over them, so that's pretty great.
I'm going to give you this update in a hammock. I'm very happy right now. So it is very much like Cinderella because she had to get her stepsisters ready for the ball, and then she was ready to not go, but then I think it's her governess, with the help of like a bunch of maids and stuff, all like prettied her up, got her ready, and she's like, what's going on? And they're like, you deserve to go to the ball. You're actually this man's blood daughter. These are his stepdaughters. You deserve out of all of them to go. And she's like, oh, thank you. And so they dress her up in like this dress that I think is like from her grandmother or something. And then she goes to the ball. Then it's from Benedict's perspective, and he just like sees her. It is pretty insta-lovey because it's like Cinderella, but it's sweet because he's so drawn to her because of how happy she is. She's like so happy that she's there because she's never been to one of these things before and all that. And so he's just like, wow, she's just glowing with happiness and like all this stuff, and he's just very drawn to her. And so he goes to ask her to dance, but she's like, I don't know how to dance. And he's like, well, then I can teach you. And she's like, where? And he's like, I know a private balcony. And she's like, how would you know of a private balcony? Because she doesn't know that he's a Bridgerton. And so he just takes her to the balconies and they talk, and they're just clicking on a lot of things. They talk the whole time, and she eventually figures out that he's Bridgerton because Colin comes to talk to them. He's mad because Benedict was supposed to dance with Penelope Featherington, I think. And since he's dancing with Sophie instead, Colin was forced to. He's like, you made me dance with Penelope. Like, what are you doing? And he's like, I met this enchanting stranger. So yeah, they were just talking all night. And she even had to leave at midnight because she had to leave before her sisters and stepmother and stuff. So, but she was like wearing a mask and everything. So it was just very mysterious. She wouldn't tell him her name or anything like that. So when the clock strikes 12, she takes off. He's like, wait, please, I need to know your name. He grabs one of her gloves, and her gloves actually have the initials of her grandmother on them and a family crest. And so he kind of uses those as clues. He, I think maybe the next day, goes to his mom and is like, do you recognize this family crest? And she's like, oh yes, that's the, and she names the family of her father. And she's like, oh, how interesting. He doesn't have any daughters. He only has stepdaughters. Are you in love with one of his stepdaughters? And he's like, well, I don't know. And she's like, okay, because I've met the stepdaughters, and I don't know if you would like any of them, but if you are in love, then like go for it. And he's like, well, I don't know that I'm in love, I'm just trying to find this girl. So I think he thinks that it's one of the stepdaughters that he was thinking of. Like I think that he thinks it's one of the stepdaughters. So I believe he's about to go call on their household. So that's gonna be interesting. Hello again. So I'm now 34% of the way through the book. I read a lot yesterday because I was really enjoying it, but it's so interesting because Benedict came to call on the house, and of course the stepmonster had her locked in a closet shining her shoes because she found the pair of shoes that Sophie wore to the ball. She found them scuffed, and she was like, I can't believe they're scuffed, this is all your fault. And she was trying to be like, no, it wasn't me, and she still is blaming her. So she's locking her in a closet and making her shine all her shoes. And that's when Benedict comes over, and he's trying to investigate, asking her a lot of questions about like her daughters and like, is there anyone else here? And she of course is just like, no, it's just my daughters. And he sees both the daughters and knows they're not the mystery girl. So then he leaves, unfortunately. But then as he's leaving, he pulls out from his pocket the glove that he was using, and they're all watching out the window and they're seeing the glove, and the stepmother recognizes it as one of their family gloves. And then she just puts it together. She's like, the scuffed shoes, the glove, Sophie was out at the ball last night. And so she goes and tells her that she's now kicked out of the house because in the father's will, he said that she was supposed to be in her care until she's 20, I think. And she is over 20 now, but she's still keeping her around to do chores and all that. But now she's saying like, no, you're kicked out. I don't want you anymore. And so she got kicked out, didn't know what to do. She just kind of like wandered off. And then there was a 2-year time jump. And we see that Benedict is at some house party somewhere that's super raucous and stuff, and he's like, I do not want to be here anymore. And so he's trying to find the host to say like, I'm leaving. But then we get Sophie's perspective on what she's been doing the past 2 years, and she's been trying to find like odd jobs here and there, and she finally landed a job as a housemaid in this house, the same house that Benedict is in. I was like, what are the chances? But the heir, like the son of the house, is super gross and like nasty to her, and so she's like trying to leave as soon as possible, and she's actually like leaving the same time as this party is going on. And so she packed up all her stuff and is leaving, but then the son like finds her and like has his friends around. It was so scary. I was like, no. But they're like trapping her, and it's like like they're drunk and they're gonna do terrible things. But then Benedict, he finds them and saves her, but he doesn't recognize her. It's so sad. He saves her, tells her that she can start working for his mother at their house. She's like, oh, thank you, and keeps on like looking at him, like trying to get him to recognize her, and it's not working. He does not recognize her yet. But then he said, we can stay in this cottage that I own until we can go to my mother's house, and then I'll get you a position there. But on the way to the cottage, it starts downpouring, and they're in like an open air carriage, and so they're getting soaked, and Benedict was already kind of sick, and so he got really sick while in the downpour. And so when they got to the cottage, no one else was there. He has a couple living there, but they weren't there for whatever reason, and so she's like taking care of him as he's super sick. And there's even a night where he's super feverish and kind of like crying out in his sleep, and she comes to check on him, and he's like talking in his sleep, and he even said like, kiss me, in his sleep, and she was like, okay. I was like, what? She actually did it. She was just like, I forget what she said. It was something like, I've always loved you or something. So this is very interesting. He's like her knight in shining armor coming to rescue her, but he doesn't even recognize her. But he still is looking for her. It's like this whole thing that for the past 2 years, it's like part of who he is. He's just like looking for this girl constantly and never has been able to find her because she's Sophie, but he still doesn't recognize her. I'm like, dude, you've been looking for her. How do you not recognize her? So that's unfortunate. Granted, she did look really different during the ball, especially because she was wearing a mask. So yeah, oh well, I can't wait for that to happen. The heck? That went a lot faster than I thought it would. Benedict, like, I don't know. I thought he was cool, but now he like wants her to become his mistress because he wants her so bad. I'm like, I don't know how I feel about that. She also wants him, granted, but like she really, being an illegitimate child, really made her convicted about really not wanting to have children unless she's married. So I'm like, that's like exactly what she doesn't want to do. So like, oh man. And then he like blackmailed her because she was threatening to just like leave and find employment somewhere, and he was like, no, it's so dangerous out there for a woman. She was like, well, I'd rather be away from you. And he was like, either come get a position at my mother's house, or I will report to the authorities that you stole from me and then make them put you in my custody. She was like, how dare you? And he was like, I'll do it. Like in his mind, it's like he's saving her from herself. But I'm still like,
I don't know how I feel about that. So now they don't like each other very much. It went from the masquerade ball being in love, and then 2 years later, he rescues her, doesn't recognize her. She cares for him while he's ill. Then they're like very, very attracted to each other and really want each other so bad. And then now they hate each other. So I'm just like, dang. Okay. But now they're at Bridgerton house and she's gonna get started as a maid. Yeah, I don't know. I really don't know how to feel about Benedict right now, personally. It makes it better that she likes him still, like she's still in love with him and wants advances from him, but it still just like feels really pushy. Like he keeps wanting her to be his mistress and that's not very romantic, and it's just something that she really doesn't want to do. That's her whole thing, is that she really wants to have legitimate children when she has children. She's really dedicated to the idea of having children when she is married. And he wants her to be his mistress, and like she's bound to have kids that way, and she like really doesn't want to do that, but she's in love with him. I'm just like, oh my gosh, it's so unromantic for him to be like, just come be my mistress, you know? That's not very romantic. He seems to be a good person. It's hard because the times are different, and it's very easy nowadays, at least compared to then, to marry whoever you want. Like there wasn't so much classism nowadays. Yeah, there's not those like divides between cultures anymore that would prevent you from being able to marry people. And it's also definitely not as acceptable nowadays to have mistresses and stuff. So I'm trying to put my head back then, but I'm just like, no, I can't condone having a mistress. I just like, I'm just really against that. So I don't think this is very romantic. I really want him to marry her. And it's because he's waiting for her, his mystery girl, his Cinderella, you know? And I'm just like, I mean, maybe the problem would be solved if she told him who she was, but still, there's still the class divide. So I really don't know what the correct solution is in this. And it's really too bad because they keep on having moments, romantic moments, and they always end with him being like, please come live with me. And she's like, no, I can't. Like, despite all of her desires and despite her heart and all of this stuff, she's like, I can't come live with you. So it's just like, oh boy. Even if she does tell him, is that gonna be the solution to the problem? I don't know. I really don't know. Also, I dislocated my knee. So that's fun. I'm trying to walk less. It doesn't hurt anymore. It just hurt like yesterday, but it's still like loose, you know? Ugh, it's so annoying. I'm trying not to like use it too much, but that's going on right now. See, this is what I'm talking about. I'm trying to remember why this happened. Right, okay, I remember. So there was an unexpected, at least unexpected by Sophie, visit from her stepfamily to the Bridgerton house, and it really rattled her. She was able to hide. Posey saw her, the younger sister, but she's the nice one, and so she kept her mouth shut. But it's still very stressful for her, and she was like shaking and stuff, and Benedict came to her and was like, are you okay? And she's like, I'm fine, I just need to get away or something. And he's like, we can go to my house. And so they end up at his house, and whoop-de-doo, guess what happens? They hook up, and it's just like, back then it was a lot more serious, and it was just, it's not what she wanted to do. It's the exact opposite of what she was trying to do with her life, and it felt kind of forced. I don't know, like she did want it, but still, I don't know, you know what I mean? She wants him, but she also is trying to be a master of herself, but he's not helping with how pushy he's being. It's really not easy for her to resist. And so I'm just like, ugh, I don't know how I feel about this. And she was like, he was very pushy after the fact, and he was like, you have to be my mistress now. And she's like, no, I won't. Like he even said, I'll send a servant to go get your stuff from the house. And she's like, no, he won't be needing to do that. And he's like, you're gonna do it yourself? And she's like, no, I'm not leaving Bridgerton house. I'm gonna still be a servant. And he's like, you have to be my mistress now. Oh, it's just so messed up. I don't know. I'm just like, it's hard because there's no solution. If she was noble, then he would have married her by now, I'm sure, because he's totally in love. Like he said it in his inner monologue, he's in love. She's in love. She loves him. So they love each other, but it's impossible for them to get married because of the class difference, which I'm sure they're going to find a clever solution for that. I don't know if they'll just like pretend that she's that Cinderella girl from the ball and pretend that she's of noble birth or something and just like fool everyone. I don't know. I'm sure they're going to end up together, but I totally agree with Sophie on this, that it should be a marriage. It shouldn't just be being a mistress. That's just so, it's just not great. So I just really wish that Benedict would stop pushing. He found out. I was really curious what his reaction would be, and he was pissed. He had literally like been on his way to basically ask Sophie to marry him because of his conversation he had with his mom, and she was like supportive of the idea of him marrying someone of lower birth. So he was like literally almost practically on his way to ask her to marry him. And he walked in on her taking care of these kids, and they were playing a game where she would be blindfolded, and they had to it's basically Marco Polo, so she was blindfolded. And so I walked in on her blindfolded and realized that it, like, having that part of her face masked made him realize that it was her. Just like at the masquerade ball. So he realized who she was and then totally blew up at her. I feel like he's not being fair because in order for her to do the things that he wanted her to do, she would have to operate off the assumption that he had fallen in love with her, and she didn't know that for sure. Like, he was saying, you could have come to me after her stepmom kicked her out of the house. You could have come to me. She's like, I didn't know that you were in love with me and stuff. And she was also very aware of the fact that they were completely different social classes and knew that it couldn't work, so she didn't want to torture herself by like teasing that fantasy. And so I'm just like, I feel like she has good reason for not telling him. I can understand him being a little bit mad, but like, he's really mad. He's like out of control. He's like, I need to get out of here before I do something that I regret. I'm like, dude, why are you this? I kind of understand. Like, I kind of get it. This is a huge thing. But like, also, why aren't you happier? The two women that you were in love with are now the same person. Shouldn't you be a little bit more happy? I don't know. That's just what I'm thinking. Oh no. Oh, this is bad. Well, she took Benedict's outburst as an invitation to leave. So she packed up her bags and told Lady Bridgerton that she was leaving, and she was like really trying to convince her to stay. She even like figured out some things about her past. Like, she could tell that she was in love with Benedict, but also she could tell that she was probably an illegitimate daughter because her cover story wasn't very good. Yeah, so she figured out a few things and was like trying to convince her to stay, but she just said she had to leave. She had to leave. But then when she went out of the house, her stepmother found her and yelled, "Stop thief, stop thief, I need a constable," because she stole these like fake diamonds off of one of her shoes to try and get money to start off with when she was being kicked out. And so I guess she really missed those fake diamonds because 2 years later she is calling her a thief for it. So she got arrested and now she's going to jail. I'm like, this poor girl cannot catch a break. Oh my goodness. Alrighty, so I finished An Offer from a Gentleman today while I was reading in the library. It was so nice, and I've discovered that I actually read so much quicker when I'm in public. I don't know what it is. I think it's just the elimination of distractions. When I'm home, I just have so many more options of things that I can do, like take a nap, for example. I feel more motivated to not be on my phone in public. I don't know why. And so I feel like I've just discovered a little hack, because I was reading for about like an hour and 20 minutes, and I read 112 pages. And that's a lot faster than I normally read, and so I was like, I should do this more often. I'll get through a lot more books. And then hopefully if I make it a habit, I might be able to have that reading speed while at home. That'd be great. But anyway, I finished Offer from a Gentleman. Oh man, it was so sad when she was in jail and her stupid stepmom came to gloat to her and all this stuff, and apparently she accused her of not only stealing the fake diamond shoe clips, but she also accused her of stealing her wedding ring. So that's a lot worse of an accusation, but either way she would have been arrested. They were gonna ship her to Australia, which is where they shipped people back then that were in trouble. And yeah, she's terrible. Her name is like Araminta or something, but every time I read it, I like in my head I think it's Amarantha like from ACOTAR, and honestly it fits. So I didn't fix it in my brain. Her name's Amarantha now forever. But Benedict found out and rushed to the jail. Well, first he told his mom, and so his mom and him came to the jail, and they saw the stepmom there, and they were totally like, oh man, that scene was so satisfying because they're so smart, and they also use their social standing to get Sophie out, and they kind of like threaten Amarantha, friggin' the stepmom a bit. They also get some help from Posey, the younger stepsister, because she's finally like finding the strength within herself to stand up for Sophie, stand up for herself, and told her that actually she didn't steal your wedding ring because I found it in this jewelry box. And stepmom gets really shocked when she says that, and we find out why later, because apparently Posey knows that the stepmom stole Sophie's dowry. Her father had left her a dowry, which was really sweet to find out because she was convinced that her dad didn't care at all about her, only cared enough to give her money to live, you know, but he actually provided a dowry for her, but she never knew because her stupid stepmom stole it. So that made me angry to find out. But Posey, bless her heart, spilled the beans. She told her the whole deal right in front of the authorities. So they couldn't really like arrest her, unfortunately, because she's a countess and that's a very high rank. So they can't arrest her, but they can at least get Sophie out of jail and make sure that she gets her dowry, and that all of that is great. And also Posey kind of got adopted by the Bridgertons, kind of, which is funny, so that she didn't have to live with Amarantha anymore because she would have treated her really horribly after that betrayal. So it's a good thing. But anyway, that was very satisfying, and Benedict completely apologized for everything, including asking her to be his mistress. He was like, that was out of line, and she's like, well, I understand why you asked it, because there was no way that we could get married. But the solution to the problem that they discovered, they kind of just told everyone that she was a distant cousin of the Earl that was her father. That kind of fixed that up, so she wasn't like super noble, but she was enough that it wasn't like an entire scandal, like he didn't marry a servant and all that. Yeah, it all turned out great. My thoughts on it, yeah, I think that I was a little put off at the beginning with Benedict's pushiness. That wasn't great, and that didn't make me really love the idea of him being with Sophie at first. It did get better, but I think that it was definitely putting me off at the beginning. I loved the Cinderella elements. I thought that was really cute of her to add in, and it was sweet once Benedict got over his feelings of betrayal for her not telling her who she was. It was really sweet, the things that he said about her being like one and the same person. How he was like, the only thing keeping me from marrying you was you from 2 years ago. I thought that you would show up again, and I didn't want to get married to anyone until that happened. And so that was sweet, that his 2 dream girls were the same person. So I really like that dynamic. That's really sweet. That ending was just great. The satisfaction of seeing an evil woman being put in her place, love it. But anyway, I am now, how far am I into this? Started the 4th book. I did decide that I'm going to read that because that is Penelope and Colin's story. I'm 31% through, so pretty good portion of the way through. It's pretty easy to recap because not a whole lot has happened. It's just mainly been like internal dialogue so far, but we're following Penelope and Colin, and they've had little sprinkles of stuff throughout the other books. So Penelope has been around for a while. As we are starting this, she is now officially a spinster because she's 28 years old, and again, that's so crazy that they consider that like a spinster back then. But she never managed to get married. Both of her older sisters managed to snag husbands like after 5 years or something of being out in society, but Penelope never got it, especially because she is in love with Colin Bridgerton. She has been in love with him ever since she was 17, and he fell off a horse because her bonnet flew off and smacked him, and he fell off the horse, and then she fell in love with him from there on. I think that's so cute. So I like that dynamic. It feels a little bit like childhood friends to lovers. Even though she was 17, it still feels like childhood. I don't know. And so they've known each other for a long time. So their dynamic is very comfortable. Like he danced with her oftentimes during the balls and stuff. They were just very comfortable around each other, and Penelope, even though she's like kind of normally a nervous person, she just gets really relaxed around him, and I already love that. Like, that's fantastic. That's like already like soulmate alert. Like, if you are comfortable around this person, that is a very green flag. And Colin, as we know from the other books, is super charming, like super loved by everyone. He is just very witty and very socially talented, I guess you could say. But he has been spending a lot of time abroad. He's been traveling a lot, and so he has never gotten married, and now he's 33, which is older than both of his other brothers were when they got married. And so they're kind of both considered just like old for being out in society, I guess, and like his mom is trying so hard to get him married. It is different for men and women because men, they could be a little bit older. Meanwhile, Penelope is considered like fully a spinster, on the shelf is what they call it, which is horrible. But it has kind of made her a little freer. She like loves food. I think that's so cute. That's like one of her things. She loves food, and now that she is on the shelf, she doesn't have to worry about stuffing her face at every ball. It said that a few times. I think Colin and her kind of bond over that because he loves food too, and so they both just like love food. They're such foodies. So I'm already like, let's go. So she's already been in love with him for a long time, and he's never shown interest back. There was one incident in the last book where Colin had just gotten back from Wales, I think, and then was talking to Benedict and Anthony, and he just said like a comment. They were just talking about like how much Lady Bridgerton wanted him to get married and stuff, and he was just like, the only option right now is Penelope Featherington, and I'm not gonna marry her. And unfortunately, she was right there and heard that. So she was like, oh, and tried so hard to play it off. She did a pretty good job of playing it off. It's like, I'm not offended, it's fine, I don't want to marry you either. So that was one incident, but that really discouraged her. So yeah, it's just like never been a popular girl, never gotten attention from guys like ever, and so I'm just like, girl, I feel you, it's so hard. So I'm like, I feel so bad for her, but she's so sweet. Like, she's just different. Like, she's very cool. Like, she's just really cool. She has head on her shoulders, and she has gotten attention for that as well from, there's this one lady named Lady Lady Danbury. I mentioned her being kind of like reminding me of Lady Catherine de Bourgh from Pride and Prejudice, but she's actually a lot better than her because Lady Danbury is like, just always speaks her mind, and it's really funny. Like, all of her dialogue cracks me up because she is so blunt about everything, because she's like, she's old, she doesn't care. So it's so funny. But she actually, during one of the balls, announced a wager that Lady Whistledown, the gossip columnist that has been writing stories for like 10 years or something, has never been unmasked. She is anonymous, and she actually put out a wager that she would give £1,000 to anyone who unmasked her. And so now that's kind of like a thing going on. Now everyone is talking about the identity of this woman. And in the last book, the last paragraph was actually like Lady Whistledown, we don't know who she is yet, but Lady Whistledown being like, I think it's time to go out and truly be myself or something. I don't even know, but I took that to mean that she would be more like out and about. I don't know. So I think maybe that mystery is going to be revealed at the end of the book. I don't know, because it hasn't been like a huge thing in the past few books to find out who she is exactly. Oh yeah, another thing that happened was Penelope and Eloise Bridgerton are like best friends, and she's always at Bridgerton house or wherever they live visiting her like all the time. And one time she came over and Eloise wasn't there, but Colin was there, and so she went in to Colin, but he was also gone, but he had left a journal like open, and she like read the journal, and it was about his times overseas and stuff, and the writing was so good, and she was like, wow, this is beautiful, I feel like I'm there. And then he came back and he got really mad at her reading this journal, and he like never lashes out, he like never has a temper, but he got really mad at her for some reason about this journal, and she felt really bad. She was like, Colin, I'm so sorry, I should not have done that, but your writing is beautiful. And he was like, you think so? So it was kind of an awkward thing, because he did get mad at her and he did like yell at her and stuff, but she also told him that she really liked the writing and that he should write, like he should pursue this. So it kind of became awkward, but then the next time they saw each other, it kind of cleared the air a little bit. But so far, yeah, I'm really liking this. It might even be my second favorite so far. I don't know yet, I haven't finished it, but I'm definitely liking the dynamic of this. Like, I've always loved the dynamic of one of them being popular and one of them being not, like either the girl or boy, and just the popular one falling for the unpopular one. I really like that trope. I don't really know, I have never heard a name for that trope, like Grumpy Sunshine, Enemies to Lovers. Like, I don't know that trope of unpopular kid and then popular kid. I don't know, but that's what I'm seeing here, and I am liking it very much. Wow. Okay. Colin came to call on Penelope, and at first it was about him telling her that he thought that Eloise was Lady Whistledown, and I'm like, I don't think so, but he thinks so because she spends like all day writing in her room, and she's like very nosy and like wants to know everything about everyone. But I feel like it's too obvious, and she wouldn't write all those things about Penelope, so I don't think it's her. But afterward, they were talking about gossip and like what would happen if, for instance, Colin and Penelope kissed. See how that would just spiral out of control, whatever. They were just talking about that topic, and then Penelope asked him to kiss her because she was like, I'm an old maid, I'm probably gonna die without anyone kissing me, I want to know what it's like to be kissed, so can you kiss me? And right before that, he had just been like, because they were talking about what would happen if there was a rumor started that they were together and stuff, and he was like thinking about it and being like, she's practically my sister, that could never happen. But then like he started thinking about it a lot. I was like, actually she's like really attractive, and like I really like her, and oh no, now I'm thinking about kissing her. And then that's when she asked, and so he did it, he kissed her. But then she said thank you afterward, and he took that to mean that he only did it as a favor to her, not because he wanted to, even though he like really enjoyed it and stuff. And so that's kind of sad. But that happened faster than I thought. Yeah, I really don't think that Eloise is Lady Whistledown, because Colin just kind of like confronted her about it, and her reaction seemed pretty genuine when she said it wasn't her. And yeah, again, like I feel like that's not it. I don't know. Wow, this is interesting. So Lady Whistledown released an article that said that she was retiring, that she was gonna stop writing articles for the paper, and everyone's freaking out pretty much because she's very popular. And then everyone is going to this one ball, I guess, and Lady Danbury, as always, just really likes Penelope. I forget if I even finished my thought earlier, but Lady Danbury really likes Penelope because of the fact that she has a head on her shoulders and just speaks her mind and stuff like that, so she really likes that about her. But she was talking about that with her until this one girl, Cressida, I still don't know how to pronounce her name, the bully from a couple books back, got up and announced that she is in fact Lady Whistledown. So not super surprised there. She did speak very not nice things about everyone, so it does make sense that she would be kind of a mean person in real life. So that's not that surprising. I didn't expect it, but like, actually these characters do make a kind of good point,
because Lady Whistledown is like humorous and clever, and a lot of people even said that they would like to be friends with her and stuff. Like, she's not a bully. She says things very bluntly, and some of them aren't very nice. But it is true that she's not a bully. It doesn't seem like she doesn't give off bully vibes when she's writing for the paper. But Cressida definitely does. So I'm kind of wondering if she's lying to get attention or something, because it doesn't seem like, from the articles at least, that Lady Whistledown ever wanted to reveal who she was. So I don't know. Maybe she's lying. I'm loving how down bad Colin is right now. Because after Cressida announced that she was Lady Whistledown, she came straight to Lady Danbury and demanded the 1,000 pounds because she had unmasked herself. But Penelope stood up for Lady Danbury and was like, I think you're lying. I don't think you are Lady Whistledown. So she was like, fine, I'll get you proof, and left. But Penelope standing up for her like required strength, and Colin was like holding her hand for it and stuff like that. And it says, before he realized what he was doing, he facilitated Penelope's departure, and she left the scene without his ever having apologized to her. He supposed he should have deemed the evening a failure for that reason alone, but in all truth, he couldn't quite bring himself to do so. After all, he had spent the better part of 5 minutes holding her hand. So it's like he considered the whole evening a success just because he spent 5 minutes holding her hand. That's so cute. Alright, well, it's the next day, and it was revealed that Lady Whistledown is, in fact, Penelope Featherington. And honestly, that's the first thing I guessed at the beginning, but then she had so much. It sounded like Lady Whistledown's articles like really made her socially unacceptable, and so I thought, like, there's no way that she's Lady Whistledown, because she would have been saying all those things about herself, and then that had caused her to be super undesirable in society and stuff. Like, why would she do that to herself? And so that's a question I'm still asking, because I'm like, if she's Lady Whistledown, why did she say all those things about herself? Because that resulted in her having not a great reputation and being not desirable and stuff. It's like, was that self-inflicted? Like, I don't know, I'm just wondering. But it does make sense, because she is very smart and very witty, and Lady Whistledown is as well. So that definitely makes sense. But Colin followed her to a church in town, and she like dropped off a letter there, like something in an envelope, and then he confronted her and opened the envelope, and it was a Lady Whistledown article that she had written. And it was her telling the world that Cressida was in fact not Lady Whistledown, and that she couldn't stand for her to be lying and stuff. So I don't know if that's actually going to get published, because Colin seems like he doesn't want her to, maybe? I don't know. Like, she just really could not allow Cressida to do that for whatever reason, so she picked the quill back up and wrote another article. So Colin feels definitely surprised, definitely shocked. Also, this is totally unrelated, but I was curious about my reading speed after yesterday, and so I took like a free reading test online, and every time it had me read like a scientific or like medical article or whatever, I was reading slower, so it was more like 350, 380 words per minute, and then anytime it was a story, I was like 500 words per minute, or like 480, 500, somewhere around there. So I was like, wow, okay, if I can focus, I can read pretty quickly, but focusing is extremely hard for me. Oh my gosh. This is so cute. They're like arguing in a carriage about the fact that she's Lady Whistledown and stuff, and how Colin thinks that she really shouldn't tell anyone that that's who she is because she'll be ruined and all this stuff. And it just kind of evolved into them making out, of course, as you do. And then they arrived at her house and they had to get out, but then like when she tried to stand up, he yanked her back down and was like, for heaven's sake, aren't you going to marry me, Penelope? Or something like that. Yeah, are you going to marry me or not? Oh my gosh, so cute. Yeah, I officially really love this pairing, because Colin's like not an angry person, but he's getting mad at the way that Penelope is treated, and that is just it's golden. But he literally like went straight from that carriage to asking her mom if he could marry her. And he literally walked in on like this extended family meeting, which was really funny, and they somehow got everyone to leave, and then he asked her if he could marry her daughter, and she literally went out and like yelled for her youngest daughter because she thought he meant her. And he was like, what are you doing? Penelope is right here. I'm talking about Penelope. And she's like, no. Why would you be talking about Penelope? And she was like so confused, and he got so mad. He was like, why wouldn't I be talking about Penelope? Like, you guys are so ridiculous to her. Like, why do you see her as so unmarriageable even though she's perfect? Like, so I love it so much. Oh my gosh. Colin's asking Daphne how to know if you're in love or not, and she said this. Benedict is not normal. It's true. It's so sweet. If I was annotating this in a book, there would be so many hearts around that. So
At their engagement ball, Penelope had instructed her editor or her publisher or whatever to distribute her latest Whistledown article in the middle of the ball. And so a bunch of like page boys came to throw into the crowd a bunch of her articles, and it was the same article that Colin had found her with at the church. Don't mind him. It's like about how saying Cressida is not the Lady Whistledown, and Colin was super angry at her because he thought that they had agreed that she wouldn't do that, but really she hadn't agreed. But he was still really mad because he was very against her doing that, and he had told her that, and she still went through with it. She did take his feelings into account, but she still did it, and I feel like if that meant a lot to her, then that's good, because she viewed it as her life's work and she did not want someone to take credit for her life's work. That's what she told him when he took her aside and they had an argument, and she said, it's my life's work and like all this stuff, and then he said all those things that I had highlighted, and it's just so sweet. He really loves her. It's so cute. This is so interesting. So they got married, and it kind of skipped over that. It was just like, yeah, and then they got married and now they're married, and I was like, huh? But it seems like it's kind of tough for them right now. Their relationship is a bit bumpy because there's just this thing between them because of the whole Whistledown thing. Whenever Penelope tries to bring it up, Colin shuts her down and is like, I'm not mad anymore, it's okay, but you can still sense that there's some kind of wall there. And whenever we're in Colin's perspective, we see that it's because she is like a successful writer, like she's done something with her writing, and how he hasn't done anything with his writing. He's just kept it in his journal, and she was able to publish hers and stuff like that, and they just had a conversation about it, and his response makes it seem like he's ashamed of her and her being Whistledown and all that, but really it's just because he's ashamed of himself. And that really reminds me of like a lot of the other Bridgerton books. I feel like in almost all of them, there's a time when the husband is mad at himself for some reason, but then it becomes like a marriage conflict where it would seem like he's mad at her, but really he's mad at himself, and so there's like some kind of separation that happens, and then they come back together in the end with understanding. Like that happened in the first book when Simon got mad at Daphne for trying to have kids with him, and then he like stuttered and then left, but really he left because he was so ashamed that he stuttered in front of her so bad, not because he was mad at her. And then with Anthony and Kate had overcome her fear of storms, and it like made Anthony jealous for not overcoming his fear of dying young, so he left, and there was like a separation there. So I'm like, is this gonna happen again? I don't remember if it happened with Benedict and Sophie. Yeah, it seemed like the conflict there was just Sophie not telling him who she was. So there was that. But yeah, that's kind of interesting that it's such a common thread for this to happen in the Bridgerton books. Okay, this is great. The way that they're making up is so great. I feel like it's a perfect way for them to make up, because Colin kind of confessed to Penelope that he was actually kind of just jealous of her, and that's why he was being like standoffish and not wanting to talk about the fact that she was Lady Whistledown and stuff. And she just responded by complimenting his writing and being like, I think that you could make something of it. I think that you are really good at it. And then he let her read some of it, and that scene was so cute because he like gave it to her and then was like super nervous and like trying to comment things about it, like, oh yeah, this part I wasn't too sure about, like trying to soften the blow or whatever. And she's like, can I just read? And he's like, yeah, sorry. So cute. This is definitely making me want to watch the series, even though I know that they changed a lot of things. I still would kind of like to see this being brought to life on a screen, which is why we have movie and TV show adaptations. But I guess I am pretty scared about the things that they change, because I don't really want anything to change except maybe a bit of Benedict's attitude. I don't know. But so they've just been talking about writing a lot, and I think that's so cute. I love the dynamic of a couple that is both artistically interested in the same art. I think that's really cool, kind of unique. I feel like you do often get a couple that are both interested in art, but it's not often that it's the same art. So that's pretty cool that they're able to just bond about that. And now Penelope is like editing his stuff so that he can publish it. It's great. I don't know, it's very wholesome. Also, on the topic of the adaptation, I wasn't really sure who was playing Penelope in the live action. I did see that one ballroom scene, but I was too distracted by the music in the background to really like register anything else. So, but I saw like a YouTube short of an interview with her, and she is the cutest thing. I watched it like 3 times just because she was so cute, and like her Irish accent and just her I don't know what it is, but it's her face. She's just adorable. I was like, no wonder Colin fell for her. Okay, so friggin' Cressida, we love her. We love her so much. She figured out that Penelope was Lady Whistledown and came to threaten her, blackmail her, in fact. I think those things mean the same thing, but you know, she blackmailed her and said that if she didn't give her 10,000 pounds, which is so much money, that's how much Mr. Darcy makes in a year, so to give you an idea. To give her 10,000 pounds or she'll tell everyone who she is. So that's fantastic. She told Colin about it and they're trying to find a solution. Penelope said they should ask Lady Danbury to pretend that she's Lady Whistledown to negate any accusations that Cressida could give. But Colin didn't like that idea, went to Anthony and asked him for help. I don't know what they're planning. So I am really nearing the end. I only have the last chapter and the epilogue left. So this is definitely the climax. Okay, that ended so cutely. So Colin's plan was basically to orchestrate a big toast at the ball. He like had Simon, because it was at Simon's house, Simon and Daphne's house. He had him like quiet down everyone and direct their attention to the balcony where they were. So they were just like over everyone. And he was like, I want to make a toast to the best woman alive, and like said a bunch of like really romantic sweet things to her, and then said, after you hear this, then you will know why I think she is the best woman alive. But then you hear Cressida in the back of the room going, no! And I was like, but then he said, because she's Lady Whistledown, and it was like this big thing, and everyone was like, for a bit. But then Lady Danbury started clapping, and then more people started clapping, and everyone started clapping, and then before you know it, the whole room was clapping, and it was like awesome. And so I think that was a great way to introduce that. It wasn't like a scandal, it wasn't a secret, a rumor or whatever. It was like an announcement from the husband who like adored her and stuff. So that really like did enough to make her save face, even though now everyone knows who she is. So that was a great way to end that. And then the epilogue. The epilogue was about Simon getting his published books. He had published his journal entries and stuff, and like written about different countries that he went to. So it's so sweet, very sweet. But that is the last book I'm going to read for today. I'm going to film my outro after the weekend's over, I think, because we're going on a weekend trip. It's not like a vacation or anything, we're just traveling for an event. So I won't be able to do any filming or any editing or anything like that. So the video is probably gonna come out later than I would have hoped, but what can you do? But that is the last book of today's video. I'll see you in the intro. Alright guys, thank you so much for watching this video. I am so glad you guys made it to the end. Thank you. Please show your support. Please like and subscribe for me if you'd like to see more of my content. If you appreciated my hard work reading this super tough to read series. I know, like it was so taxing on me. The editing was at least taxing on me, so at least give me some love for that. But yeah, if you feel like watching anything more from me, I have some great videos planned, so if you want, go ahead and subscribe so that you can be notified whenever I post again. Tell me what you guys think of the first 3 Bridgerton seasons, and if you listened to the 3rd Bridgerton book, let me know if you're excited for that to be adapted. So yeah, with that, I hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next video that I make. Bye y'all!